So yeah, this game is kicking my ass. I love it. It's kicking my ass not in a difficult way. Let's talk about difficulty. Let's talk about difficulty in video games. So, do you think, here's a question. I'm going to ask you a question about game design, all right? Everybody ready for game design? So, do you think that the highest difficulty in a video game should be the optimal play experience? Also, Meat Shield, welcome back. Or do you think normal should be the optimal experience? Because this game skews easy. This game skews easy. So I'm finding it, and I'm shit at video games. I am a shit video gamist. My gaming is low grade. It is some sludge gaming. You know this.
Have returned.
Lucid, welcome back. If you're designing a game, and when I say designing a game, I mean like you're creating an artifact of game designery that you want people to play, and you want them to have a certain experience, because you can't pretend like you're designing a game without an experience in mind. So let's imagine you're designing a game and you create it with, this is the thing, right? Like, this is why I think that Dark Souls not having a difficulty level is good. I kind of don't like when games have sliding scale difficulty, because I feel like the designer should have in mind a difficulty rating for their game, which to me indicates that if normal is the game's default, if normal is the experience they wanted me to have with Horizon, the game is supposed to be easier. Yeah, gosh, I wonder about that, because I'm finding the game quite easy. I've died like twice in combat, and that's just from me being stupid, like intentionally, well, not intentionally dying, but dying because I know I'm not paying attention. I'm not playing optimally. I feel like this game, they could have aimed for a harder difficulty as normal, but I'm also really enjoying that it's not that difficult, because I'm not that good at video games. So I kind of like that the design of the game skews easy, because it makes me less afraid of feeling frustrated. It's giving me room to explore. Does the genre of the game, open world, exploratory thing, does that affect the kind of difficulty you should put in your game? Yes, the answer is yes, definitely it does. But like, you're trying to create an experience as a game designer, and having an optimal difficulty means that you should engineer the game to feel a certain way. Like, imagine this is why Dungeons and Dragons, right? Court of Swords, in which every encounter I have created has been intentionally set at hard or deadly, right? This would be, in this game's terms, hard or very hard, right? Every encounter, and that sets the tone of Court of Swords, because in Dungeons and Dragons, the designers aren't the only designers. They don't design the experience, they design the tool set that allows for the experience. The GM finishes that design and presents it to the players in the form of actual play. That version of Dungeons and Dragons that I'm playing may not be the same as someone who's playing all easy or medium encounters. So Dungeons and Dragons cannot be designed for an optimal difficulty, because by default, it's not finished when we're given it. Now, these games are finished. Horizon is done, barring day one and forward patches. We end up with a finished game experience, but there are a selection of... I thought you were going to go leave and do things. Blooge. Thanks for the nerps, though. Yeah, that's the thing, right? So I guess the other thing, and SB has already pointed this out, and maybe some other folks in chat, the other thing is you can design an experience in a video game where that sliding scale is part of your design. But that's much more difficult, right? In a way, and this is going to sound like I'm underselling like Bloodborne or Dark Souls, but in a way, that is a harder task than simply choosing a difficulty for your game and designing around it, right? Because that way, your game has to be just as good from easy all the way up to very hard, even if those experiences are quite different, which they must be by definition, right? Because the amount of times it takes for you to get hit before you die, the amount of punishment enemies take before they die, the amount of enemies in the game, all of those things affect the ongoing narrative that emerges from the game. But most of the time, in my experience, we're looking at something like bullet sponging, right? Where we just turn up how many hit points the enemies have, we turn up how much damage they have, and that's that. And it's not really about changing the core experience. If you want to see this done in an interesting way, find a game that adds new mechanics as it gets more difficult, right? That adds more challenging things that you need to do to make the game more interesting. Look at the AI getting smarter. Now, in that regard, let's go back to the original question. In that regard, I do think that a harder difficulty becomes the optimal experience if you're missing mechanics by playing an easier difficulty. If the game simply doesn't include things, you're missing content, then the harder difficulty is indeed the optimal experience. And when I say the optimal experience, I mean the experience the designers intended for you to have when you played their game. Do we, when we create a game, do we create a game that is a base experience and add on to it to create higher difficulties, or do we create a higher difficulty experience that contains the entire game at the difficulty we want, and then functionally dumb down the easier difficulties? In which case, should not then very hard be normal and scale back? Perception is the key here, right? Normal is normal because it's normal, right? And that sounds like such a fucking truism, but normal being normal by definition means this is the middle level of the game. This is the game. Above it is optional. Below it is also optional. Normal has to be the baseline. So there's your game design truism for the day. Normal is normal because it's normal.